Hey, time travelers. It's been a minute, and without sounding too self-aggrandizing, I wanted to apologize for the gap in time travel summaries over the past weeks. This work, which doesn't feel like it's work, is very important to me, but more than just checking boxes and doing the things I set out to do, the way I go about doing them is more important than anything. I hope for anyone who's been along for this ride, it's fairly evident that my heart really goes into this. I immerse myself in the past, to the point it sometimes feels hard to come back to the present moment even. And the ride that we've been taking through 2019 and 2020 with Chan and the kids has felt very real to me. I've done my best to try to convey not just the events that took place, but more than anything to try to stay true to the emotional beats that carried SKZ and STAY through it all. I know what it's like to wish you'd been there sooner for the kids, and my hope with these time travel posts has been to help leave a trail of breadcrumbs for anyone that this kind of narrative resonates with. It's something I wished I had as a baby STAY, and this isn't light work, but it's something I've really deliberately carved out emotional space for. I imagine a lot of you will understand what it's like to balance emotional labor, even when it's something that's very, very welcome. It still takes energy, and that's something I've been forced to rearrange in my own life over the past weeks. Strangely, I think it came at a time where I felt like the kids were all right though. You know, our last deep dive in episode 64 had us solidly in God's menu territory, which was a golden age for stray kids. And I think a part of me felt like it was safe to leave them and stay to it while I sorted some things out in my own life. I briefly considered making up all those individual weeks, but the honest truth is that it would be something I'd come to consider a burden, and I literally never show up in this space with that energy. So I'll ask you to forgive me, knowing the structure is all made up anyway, and I'll ask you to bear with me too as I navigate forward in the rewatch, figuring out where that balance lies, and showing up in this space with my whole heart, and making sure I've got enough to go around everywhere else I'm needed too. Having said that, as far as time travel summaries are concerned, we're taking our biggest leap yet from episode 64 in July 2020 to catch up to our regular Sunday rewatches this week, where we'll be rewatching episode 70, putting us right at the end of August 2020. We're going straight from one era to another, shifting from Go Live and God's Menu to the announcement of the kids' first repackaged album, In Life. Coming from outside of K-pop, where repackaged albums are not usually treated as huge new releases, a repackaged album as its own standalone comeback was a concept that was really foreign for me. But for Stray Kids, even though this album included music from Go Live, it was still treated with the total hype of a new comeback, and the excitement around it was huge, because it's so important to keep in mind the absolutely massive tidal wave of baby stays that had flooded the fandom since God's Menu was released just a few short months ago. God's Menu's music video was the kids' first to hit 100 million views. They did that in just over 2 months, and while that's something that's not out of the ordinary for the kids' newer title tracks in the here and now, at the time this was beyond unprecedented. For context, in 2025, Levanter still only has 50 million views, which, as an editorial aside, is something I will literally never be able to understand. But that's why so many stays are fiercely protective of songs like Levanter and others in the kids' earlier discography. Because God's Menu is really when things took that tipping point to feeling closer to what's deserved for the amount of talent they have and the caliber of work they've always been doing. So this was a moment that felt like the kids were finally being given the recognition they deserved. And I absolutely love how that narrative aligns with the messaging they were sewing into their art around this time too, because they were leaving behind all the questioning and searching from their I Am and Clay series and really loudly showing the world exactly who they were, with Go Live coming in with the addictive heat of God's Menu and laying out an absolute buffet of all the flavors Stray Kids have to offer. So as we transition into In Life with Backdoor on the horizon, we're getting our first glimpse of how this is going to extend into the future, with the first teaser trailer showing Stray Kids arriving at that now infamous Backdoor, backed by a massive crowd of stays. The visuals and the energy behind them just could not have been more on point, and it's a really exciting time to be reliving Stray Kids history. We've been walking through the kids' early years so far, really mindfully being by their their sides as they've navigated countless struggles of literally every kind. And because we're time travelers, we know the hardest days are not actually all behind them. But we can absolutely revel with them in these moments too, because celebrating these achievements and showing up for the joy and celebration, being part of that sea of backdoor stays, even as time travelers who are years behind, is just as important as sending support and love to the moments where it was sorely needed. Which is why, as ever, as always, without fail, we'll be here this Sunday, April 6th at 11 p.m. KST to rewatch episode 70 together. I'll see you then.